what we have that I think makes Be Downtown very special is there's a built-in sense of nostalgia to Be Downtown. I can't tell you, probably 95% of the times I sit down in a meeting with somebody, they will say, my grandfather was a beekeeper, or I remember we used to have a family farm and we had beehives out at the farm. And it makes people happy to think about a simpler time, or to think about their grandfather that might not be here anymore, their grandmother that they jar honey with, and that works really well for us because our hope at Be Downtown is to leave people happy.
In terms of revenue, you've been in operation for how long now?
For 4 years.
And how's the business doing revenue-wise?
Business is this year is like a really good year for us. So my goal, we've never missed a goal with Be Downtown except for my goal of I wanted $1 million by March. So that was my little tagline, $1 million by March.
$1 million in ARR.
Yep, annual recurring revenue, and March is my birthday, so I wanted it before my 26th birthday. I wanted $1 million in annually recurring revenue, but we didn't hit that. Part of that being we stopped sales to try to build the Institute. Now that the Institute is pretty much ready to go, we will now be at $1 million in revenue, an annual recurring revenue.
$1 million ARR is pretty good in 4 years, you said, right?
Yes.
That's how long? And how much of that is profit?
So the profit margin changes depending on how many hives we have in a certain area, but right now we're looking at about 60% profit margin, and that increases as we sell more hives in Atlanta and North Carolina.
So you came to Atlanta through the Engage Fund, and the Engage Fund is kind of interesting because what they're doing is kind of bridging the gap between Atlanta has, is a hub for very large corporations and several Fortune 500s, but they're bridging that gap between those companies like AT&T and ICE and Invesco and Home Depot, and then the startup community in Atlanta.
It's a brilliant model.
Yeah.
Like, it works really well.
Right, and for you it was great because it got you a foothold in a lot of those companies.
So we find out Dan Cathy, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, is a beekeeper. The CEO of Invesco, Marty Flanagan, his wife is a beekeeper. The CEO of Georgia World Congress Center is a beekeeper. They're all like these undercover beekeepers. Ann Cox from the Cox family, she's had bees on her property for years. It's not random that all of these top leaders that everybody looks to as an effective leader are also beekeepers or have some sort of involvement with bees.
You took a little bit of money from the Engage Fund,
Yes.
but are you considering taking any more money to grow the company?
That's what, as we've been building the Institute, that's been, we've been wondering about what we do with that and taking on money. And, I do love that we've bootstrapped this company. We've shown people, I feel like there's this thought process with startups right now, like, well, I don't have to make money for 4 years. I'll just take on, I'll take on a ton of money or a ton of investment. And it's just normal. And if you've got a good product and a good company, I don't think that's normal. Like, I think we've just made it the new norm to not make money and just take on money, and that's just how people think they build their businesses today. And because
it's almost like people think the goal, to some extent, it's almost like the goal is to raise money versus to make money. There's this whole cachet, or a lot of companies get pressed when they raise money now, but there's less emphasis on actually making a profit and being profitable and making money. So it's nice to see that you're kind of focused on like a path to profitability and versus just like, hey, give me a big check. And then once you figure out what your product market fit is and what your sales cycle is, and you get that perfected, now that's when you can take some money and really accelerate that growth. Let's talk about our friends there in the back.
Yes.
How many bees are in there?
there's probably about 1,000.
1,000?
1,000
okay.
in there.
So, having these guys on the ride with us reminds me of, the last couple of years, just kind of learned how there's this entire industry where bees are moved all around the country. So, for example, I think a lot of people, I didn't really realize, or you don't stop to think that like bees are, without bees you don't have strawberries, blueberries, a lot of our fruit, nuts. And like particularly like I was reading about in California, the almond industry has really blown up over the last 10, 15 years or so. And there aren't enough bees in the natural California environment, you know, local bees, to pollinate the almonds.
Right.
So they basically every year will collect thousands of bees, maybe hundreds of thousands, millions, from different parts of the country, and they ship them to California to basically help produce almonds.
Yeah.
Right?
Honeybees are the only producer of almonds, and that's the commercial beekeeping industry. There's every year around 1.5 million hives are going out to California, and they get moved. They start like in these peppers in Florida, and they get moved, and in February they're in the almonds in California, and they come back across the US and they're in the blueberries, and there's a whole industry of just moving these hives.
The same hives just going all around the country doing different work.
It is.
And it's and I read something too, I don't know if this is true, but the drivers can't stop the truck like on some of these hauls because otherwise the bees, something happens to them if they stop moving.
They'll get too hot, they can't regulate their temperature, they'll overheat, they'll get really stressed, they can die. You're moving them at night. We need those big beekeepers. And when I see, Bee Downtown runs 250 hives, they're running like 60,000 hives. They're no joke. But they're feeding us, because if those beekeepers all backed out and stopped, we wouldn't be able to pollinate what we need to pollinate, because those wild hives are gone that used to be in all these buffer zones. Like all this green space that we see as we drive around Atlanta, that's what the bees need to be healthy.
A couple of years ago, I thought I read there was a massive decline in the number of bees, right? We lost 50% of the bees or something like that.
Every year we lose about 40% of the bees in the US, honeybees.
I don't know if this was something I read or maybe it was just a Black Mirror episode that I saw, but weren't they working, or maybe it was just the episode, there were drone bees.
Drone bees, which is funny.
Bees had died out and they were going to create these little tiny robotic bees that would do their job.
Yeah, and that's, I really hope we never get to a place where we need that, because honeybees have been around for 110 million years. They are able to withstand so much, and they're an indicator species. So the fact that they're declining, they're trying to tell us we have got to have a reality check with how we treat the earth, and we need to start doing a better job of protecting it and preserving it.
So if all the bees are gone, what happens?
We're in big trouble. They're responsible for 70 of the world's top 100 food crops. Every third bite of food you eat is thanks to a honeybee.
What do you like to see happen in terms of, keeping the bees and that population healthy and sustainable over time? What would you want to see?
I would just love for people to fall back in love with agriculture, to fall back in love with the amount of work that goes into taking care of the environment, because we're so used to having things done for us and easy and immediate, and Mother Nature teaches you patience. You cannot rush Mother Nature, and my hope is that people start to love the earth again. And with Bee Downtown, if they can see those beehives, and then they want to go to their farmer's market and they meet a farmer, and they kind of fall in love with agriculture again, I think people will fall back in love with taking care of the earth as well. We just have to put a value back into agriculture, which it's not there right now. And so when Bee Downtown started, I got laid into by multiple beekeepers saying you're trying to profiteer off a bee decline. You should never charge people to put beehives somewhere. That's a gift. Just take the honey from it. And I used to think, well, maybe I am doing this wrong. Should I be more careful about this? Should I not charge people? And then I realized if I don't charge people, they don't value the amount of work that goes in to me keeping those hives healthy.
Well, and it probably never would happen, right? Right. You would never have, an AT&T, a Home Depot, an Invesco, or these companies would never just even think about it, right? So now it's, in a lot of ways, businesses understand business. So now it's kind of like, and it's a way to bring a cachet and a kindness and a warmth to their business in an era where people are looking for that, employees are looking for that. So I think it's brilliant. In this journey now that you've had for 4 years, what's the biggest lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Ooh. I think for me it's that I don't know it all, and I never will, and to not be too prideful to ask for help, because if you dig your heels in and something's not working and you're not willing to ask for help, or admit defeat and try it a different way, you can ruin your company very quickly. And I think for me it's asking. I mean, the amount of people that have helped Be Downtown along the way by me just being very honest and open of like, I need your help, like I can't do this, can you please help me? People want to help, and they also want to help an underdog, and we're kind of an underdog in the startup world. And I'm so grateful for all those people that have gone above and beyond to help us, because if I hadn't asked for help when I needed it, I don't think Be Downtown would still.
Well, it sounds like you've learned a few things already too, in addition. I mean, you've learned that just because some people say no early on, doesn't mean everybody's going to say no. You've had some people turn you down, but a lot of people have welcomed you. And then the other thing that seems like you've learned is how to pitch the idea and how to sell it and how to really position it, which always takes time to figure that out.
Sales is an art. I am definitely learning that.
If you could do something different, what would you do differently?
There was one time where I should have spoken up and told somebody that was working at Be Downtown at the time, you're done, like this is, and I didn't, and I realized by the time they left the amount of mental capacity that it had drained from me. I should have stood my ground and said, you're like, this is done, you're fired, and I didn't, and I tried to work with them to keep them around, and it cost Be Downtown a lot of money, it cost Be Downtown a lot of time, and if I could do that again, I would have a stronger voice.
I think one of the lessons I learned pretty early at ICE, and I think a lot of young companies struggle with, is sometimes you don't want to let somebody go because you think that they're too valuable or indispensable. And what I learned is that you're going to be better off, and a lot of times they'll be better off.
Right.
And no one is really that indispensable, and you can figure it out. And there are a lot of people who are extremely valuable, but not when it's at the expense of the company culture,
right,
and the kind of negative impacts that it can bring to the company. Leigh-Kathryn, it was really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was really fun riding with you. Thanks for being a guest on Techrides.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome to get to ride in the Jeep and talk business with you, and I look forward to doing it again. Well,
I'm looking forward to following you and seeing what happens with your career and what happens with Be Downtown. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
You're welcome.